Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the Frontline Changes Report. And a lot of very big changes, very significant developments, and unfortunately, again for the pro-Ukrainian guys, is all red. The frontline change are all red. So these are some very big because of the Intel drop. Finally, some updates on some quieter frontline that we haven't seen updates over the past few days. So these are pretty big. We have frontline change over at Sinkivka, Pishan, Bodanivka, Pivnishny, Zalizny, Pivdeny, all the Nene, and New York, Yurivka, Pentelemonivka, as well as Novoselivka. So we go into Sinkivka. Over at Sinkivka, based on Russian mapping, they claim. Let me forgot to bring out my arrows. So the Russian forces have claimed some advances over on the eastern part of Sinkivka. So this is some slight frontline change. This is not corroborated on the Ukrainian side just yet. This is just a Russian claim tentatively. But of course, as usual, this is not the first time the Russians have arrived at this region here. Russian forces have taken this junction before, and then they are unable to hold it. So there is always this possibility that the Russians are unable to hold this position, because the terrain here is just super flat and there's not much places to hide. So it's just all flat grounds. So there is a high chance that the Russians just wouldn't be able to hold this junction again. So the next frontline change is over at Pishan. So over at this Pishan, the Russian Defense Ministry has announced the capture of Pishan, and this goes in line with the declaration by the pro-Russian sources. The Ukrainian sources have not acknowledged this just yet. They only acknowledged the raising of the flag by the Russian forces in this region. The latest Russian mapping are based on Rybas mapping. They also didn't, despite they say that it's a capture, they also did not really put it as a full capture of the entire place. So the Russian forces basically was mapped to have captured these grounds, and everything around it is just gray zone. So I wouldn't really exactly call this full capture, but no, they do whatever they want. Russian forces basically have more control around most of this region, including this heavy entrenchment on the south of Pishan. There is still areas here over in the northwest as well, northeast as well as on the western part that is still not firmly under Russian control. So we shall continue to monitor. This is just a Russian claim. This is not corroborated just yet, as I mentioned. So after Pishan, we go all the way to Bodanivka. So over at the Bakhmut front, some massive big frontline changes have dropped. Over in the tri-town region of Krykhovka, Bodanivka, and Kalinina, Russian forces basically have taken huge amount of grounds around here, including parts of the tree lines, these two tree lines and this thicker one, and the entire full tree line, entire forest, all the way north of Kalinina and the northwest of Bodanivka, signifying massive Russian development and progress around here. The speed of the advance or the scale of the advance might suggest that the Ukrainian forces may have just abandoned their position. Instead of a Russian attack and capture, it could be just the Ukrainians withdrawing from this area here as a result of maybe it's just untenable, you see, due to the fall of Kalinina. So the Ukrainians are trying to move to better defensive grounds, and so it could be just this forest that the Ukrainians might want to retreat to, and then the Russians just basically take whatever the Ukrainians are unable to hold and develop this new front line. So this also explains why we kept on hearing fighting at Krykhovka. So this is probably what it was mentioning about. So after Bodanivka, we go into the New York front, and a frontline change over at the Pivnishny, at the thorax sector of the New York front. So you can see already a lot of frontline change around here. So we go to the tiny one first. So over in the Druzhba Pivnishny region, Russian forces seems to have captured a little bit of grounds based on pro-Russian mapping. So this is just a claim, not guaranteed yet. And then we move further down to the main dish. So over the Zalizny region, massive amount of grounds being captured. Russian forces have taken more of the forest on the eastern part of this high-rise zone in Pivnishny. In Zalizny itself, Russian forces also seems to have expanded control as the Ukrainians are unable to hold back the Russians, and the entire Pivdeny region has been captured by the Russian forces. So we're going to zoom in a bit to go into details. So in this area here, this is based on Russian claims. On the eastern part, Russian forces have taken this entire area here, including the neighborhood, the residential area. So we still have we don't have much updates regarding the high-rise buildings. Not sure if the Russians actually fully captured it, but this is still significant as the Russians slowly close down and they'll take more grounds. And over at this Zalizny region, I can zoom out a bit. Russian forces actually have expanded their control, basically securing the residential zone around here. They also expanded all the way to the south, to the western part of this breakthrough that the Russians previously held, and in the process taking a lot of these trenches, which I did mention before. There's a possibility that the Ukrainians do not have the manpower in the New York front to actually man all these trenches, so which might suggest why the Russians are making so much progress in this area. The Ukrainians, of course, still have some high ground, good defensive position in this area, west of Zalizny, but the Russians seems to have the initiative right here. Further nearer to the Pivdeny region, Russian forces have also taken the entire of Pivdeny, including this hill over here, as well as this entire another hill over there. So the Russian forces have taken all these grounds. This is mapping by the Ukrainian side. Russian side actually extend this a bit further, taking that everything else over on this south of Pivdeny, as well as giant parts of the Zalizna River. So this joins up with the previous Russian claims of progress over in this South Pivdeny region. So these are very, very significant mapping change. So yeah, huge amount of grounds. I have no words because my words are always the same: massive collapse, massive, epic, big, great. I have very poor vocabularies. So anyway, over at the New York front, we can also see that this entire column is now getting fatter. They are eating a lot like me. So the Russian forces expanded the control over in the south central part of New York. Actually, I should zoom in a bit here. So this is the absolute center of New York, and the Russian forces basically expanded control across the entire eastern part of where the Russians have previously taken. Actually, I've forgotten to map this part as well. So this area here is also disclaimed. So I forgot to map this. I'll map this later. So Russian forces have taken a huge foothold over in the southern part of the central New York, which means that the Russians can go for the crossing that I mentioned before. They can actually go there. So they are heading in the direction where I think they should be heading. So yeah, this will also allow them to attack the railway station in two different directions. So this is all very natural development of where the Russians would go. Over as we zoom out a bit in the southern part, we also see the Russians have some more firm control over on this eastern part of the tree trunk, and then on the other side, the tree trunk also extended further in the south of Yurivka, and they are heading towards this western part, which is called the Pentalemilivka, or whatever it is. So they are heading that direction. So this is just a natural expansion to secure the rear position, the logistics, and this is very blitzkrieg You know, if you remember, there is this very famous explanation video of the blitzkrieg. So how the blitzkrieg works is that there is a main push, uh, there's a main push, and then as this push out, as it push forward, there is forces going sideways and securing the flanks and pushing the enemy further and further apart as it basically cuts all the way through the enemy lines. So this is basically very very blitzkrieg, no, in my opinion, very very typical of that kind of explanation. And it does looks like it as well, because the Russians actually penetrated so far into New York. So it does seems to be exactly how it looks like. So after the New York region, the front line change, the last there's one just one there's actually all the front line changes. Oops, this is all the front line changes, because there's so many parts of here. So this is called Novoselivka, and then this area is named as a Pentelemonivka, yeah, and then Yurivka, and then of course New York. So which is why there's a lot of names that confuses me. So anyway, this is all the frontline changes. Primarily, you can see that it's the New York front with the big intel drop over in the Zalizny, Petnishny, Pivdeny region, as well as the New York, Yurivka, Novoselivka region. So both of these New York front, New York sector and the Thorax sector, both receiving an enormous amount of front updates. So yeah, clearly the Ukraine is winning, right? No, Ukraine is winning. And I'll see you guys in the next update.